What the fastest way you've seen someone ruin their life? I had a friend in college who had a tendency to act before thinking, but was generally fun and well-meaning. After I had graduated, my friend apparently got coerced by a woman he was trying to sleep with to try heroin just once. As I heard it, he refused initially, then caved because he felt pressured. My friend overdosed and died. Just like that, one bad decision ended his life. Rip Mike. A former acquaintance was playing around with a homemade crossbow that I'd helped him with. I was massively into archery and fletching, and he seemed serious about it. I typically made him leave it with me because deadly weapon. I have an explanation. He kinda didn't. Anyway, to convince his parents to let him join an archery club, he wanted to show off the crossbow we made. I thought it was a decent plan, so let him take it without any ammo. Turns out he was gaming me to get more playtime with his favorite toy, had gotten hold of some bolts, and was fucking around shooting his shed a fair bit. He somehow ended up firing a bolt that missed the shed completely, passed between the slats on his fence, and hit his neighbor's daughter in the spine. She hasn't walked since. He got fucked up real bad by her unstable older brother. They both did jail time. Acquaintance was disowned and ended up homeless, and now I'm not sure where they are in life. Edit. I've had a few people comment that even a stable person would want to fuck up someone for something like this. Truth told, I half agree. I still feel like it's important information to the situation, however, and just want to qualify the statement. The beating he got was brutal, involved a crowbar, and left him with a broken femur. The difference between wanting to do something like that and actually acting on it is important. Also, we were 18 at the time. The girl was 12, her brother 21, for all those asking. About 50 years ago, when my great uncle was in his early 20s, he drove home so drunk that he ran over and killed 2 college students and didn't even realize it. After his initial incarceration, he didn't know how to function as a free citizen, so he keeps getting himself sent back to jail. For example, he got out of jail around a year ago and couldn't make his first month's rent. His solution was to walk to the convenience store, steal a beer, and sit on the curb waiting for the cops to arrive. Dropped out of a very good college with a full scholarship that his family could never have afforded otherwise, after 3 years due to World of Warcraft addiction. No, this wasn't me. I managed my addiction responsibly. Edit. We are thinking of different guys. The fact that dozens of replies are "Hey, I know this guy's" disconcerting but not unexpected. Edit. I played WoW from release through Cataclysm, but never really had a problem walking away from it to focus on life, which is probably the experience of most of the player base. After I quit, I started having intrusive thoughts about relapsing, even 8 years later, but have never felt that I'd given to that. I had a friend years back, always kind of an odd guy, but he had a good heart. Anyway, one day, I was hanging out with him and a few other friends, and he told us he was going to get a tattoo tomorrow, and had this super cool idea, but he wouldn't tell us what it was, because he wanted it to be a surprise. We saw him about a week later. He had tattooed 3/4s of his face green. Like, no design or anything, just solid dark forest green. Basically, he just left the top right quarter of his face normal and the rest was all green. He had been immediately fired from his job the day after getting the tattoo. I kind of lost touch with him shortly after that, since he moved to another city. I'd heard he wound up living in his car. No idea why he did what he did. He'd had a very good job in it at a pretty big company, and was making decent money. No clue why he thought permanently turning 3/4 of his face green would be super awesome. I was there when my older brother tried heroin for the first time. Fast forward 15 years, and he is constantly going to the hospital for abscesses that appear on his arms and legs, and is almost completely cut off from the rest of the family because he's robbed our parents more than once. Every few years he swears he is going to kick the habit. The first few times we collectively ponied up cash to send him to rehab and tried to be as supportive as we could. After the 10th relapse or so, we are too exhausted to even pretend to be hopeful about his newest attempt to get clean. In the Air Force, this new guy joins and goes out to a bar, then decides to drive home. Gets a DUI, loses all his rank, has to pay a ton in fines, but leadership fought for him and he was allowed to stay in the Air Force. 2 months later, as he's paying tons of lawyer and legal fees, he does something really stupid. Drives home from the same bar drunk and gets arrested. Loses his license and gets kicked out of the military, so loses all his income while he's thousands of dollars in debt. That's not even the worst part. A few months later, he celebrates being a civilian again by, you guessed it, going to the same bar, then driving home drunk. Arrested and put in jail for a while. I can't imagine he has many future career opportunities with a less than honorable discharge and an arrest record. I had an acquaintance who was pretty successful, early 30s, good job, homeowner, etc. His next door neighbors had custody of their niece, a 16-year-old cheerleader who was home alone all the time. They struck up a friendship. Need I say more? Actually, yes. The cops stop him randomly with her in the passenger seat. They aid her, since she looks young. Call her guardians, who deny that he has permission to take her anywhere. Here's the thing, they had crossed a county line. Boom. Kidnapping charge. They break him an interrogation, and he admits to 6. Boom. Statutory rape charges. They convince him to unlock his phone, and find her nudes in his inbox. Boom. Child pornography charges. Boom goes the cell door. My boss has a saying, you're only one more drink, and one stupid comment away from losing your career. That being said, I watched a former coworker pull a beanie toward the crown of his head and say, check it out, I look like Brian's cock. Apostrophe. Brian was his uncircumcised subordinate, sitting right across from him. My former coworker was out of a job within a month, divorced within 6, and living on the streets within 3 years. High school acquaintances were partying underage and some other kids with drama were buzzing the party in some stupid loud car. Drunk guy thinks the best way to handle this is to throw a huge paving stone at the car on one of its passes. Stone goes through window, hits passenger, mid-body / lap, not head. Driver panics and refuses to take passenger to hospital. Apparently everybody was under the influence. She bled out of internal injuries in the hours that followed. Guy who threw the stone is still in prison for manslaughter. Less than 24 hours. My ex-neighbor's ex-girlfriend went on a racist road rage rant that got filmed. It went viral on Twitter. I remember reading the news article and thinking about her for some reason. She wasn't named. It wasn't until months later that I found out it was her. She was fired from her $300,000 a year job next day and immediately started getting death threats. She had to move in with her boyfriend. She tried getting a job, but people would look her up and be like, WTF. She spent $10,000 on a reputation defender, changed her name, was shunned by many family and friends. Her boyfriend, who she wanted to marry, broke up with her because he couldn't stand the months of depression. She ended up leaving the state. I knew this guy in my 20s. He was kind of new to our little group. He brought this girl around. She was trying to fuck everybody. I didn't know him that well, but I tried to tell him about her. He didn't believe me and took her side. We stopped talking. When she was trying to fuck me one night, she told me he had a premature ejaculation problem and he was really lame in bed. She specified she really needed some good dick because he seriously only lasts like a minute. I wasn't interested in her and politely declined. Anyway, I didn't actually see it, but a few months later, I heard he got her pregnant. The fastest I know of someone ruining their life was about a minute. Edit. Wow. Didn't expect this to blow up like it did. To answer some of your questions. That happened. It was about 10 years ago. He cut our whole group off so nobody knows any details. I suspect it's 50/50, whether it was his or not, but I'll probably never know. I'm my own perfect example for this. Started abusing meth and hanging with all the wrong people. Within 3 months I wrecked my car, lost my home, my relationship went up in flames, and I caught some misdemeanors and felonies when I had only ever had speeding tickets before then. Now I'm on probation for the next several years, or until I can pay off the thousands I owe the court. Stuck living with my parents at 34, single, jobless, and struggling massively with anxiety and depression. Yay bad choices. Yay consequences. I was a licensed firearms owner in Canada, and I sold a handful of handguns to my crack dealer when I was still smoking a few years back, and it caught up to me 3 years after I got sober. I'm going to court for sentencing in a couple of months, with the prosecutor seeking 6 to 8 years. And although it may not seem like that much in the grand scheme of things, but since I quit smoking crack, I got my driver's license, started my own construction business, and I'm in a 4-year relationship with an amazing woman, who was the reason for my getting sober. All of that is going to be gone, and my grandpa, who is the only family who raised me I have left, will most likely be gone, because of him being 84. I'm not sure where you would count the life being ruined. The second I made the decision to sell the firearms, the second the RCMP and local police pulled me over with 20 cars in morning rush hour, my name being put in the newspaper with my crime, or when I get sentenced in a few months. I've decided it was the second I made the decision. It helps to be insane. I say that as someone who is certifiably bonkers. I worked with an engineer at a manufacturing facility at one point in my career. We'll call him Bob Dobbs. We had defense-related contracts with major players like Boeing. It was not this man's job to design anything, but to do manufacturing shit. At some point, within a year of my arriving, he began answering the phone with customers as Bob Dobbs, engineering manager, and insisting that all communication go through him. He got away with this for nearly 3 months until someone called the actual engineering manager asking for Bob Dobbs, the engineering manager. Due in no small part to the what the fuckery involved, a review of Bob Dobbs' work began. He had been redesigning/optimizing customer designs before they went to production. There was almost $1 mil of scrap sitting on the shop floor. He was terminated and began a career delivering pizza. My stupid ex-girlfriend, in an effort to pay back a loan shark, maced the opening manager of a Blockbuster and stole the bank deposit bags. Then, she went and picked up her niece and nephews, all under age 8, and causally drove around with them. She got felony stopped on a major roadway. Her photo was on the top stories at 10 lead into that evening's news. This happened during the NBA Finals that year. I think it was during Game 6 or 7, so huge viewing audience. Oh, she was daily recognized and apprehended because her best friend was store manager of that Blockbuster, and she was there all the time. And she had ripped off an application the day before. She spent the next 3 years in a women's prison. Worked in the German social welfare system Akasachbabita im Sozialamt. A client of mine said he thinks that my calculations would be wrong after his wife left him because he got not enough money. I asked him if he had any expenses I didn't know of. He was sure he gave me all infos. I asked him to bring me all his invoices, vouchers, receipts etc, which he did a few days later. I read all his papers and found a payslip that I didn't know of. According to my files, he got social welfare at this time, and I had no infos that he had a job with income, which would be social welfare fraud. I kept reading, and I found a so-called Versicherungspolice, a insurance policy for a 5er BMW. You should know that back in the day a car was a salvageable capital acca. He had to have his car sold to use that money for groceries etc. It was mid-90s. It's different now. Then I found the purchase contract for the car. Expensive and with installment payments. Then I found the contract with the bank that gave him the loan for the car. So I called the bank and asked them why the hell they are giving a loan that big to a unemployed social welfare recipient. The woman from the bank began to panic because that's new information to her. And while she was trying to explain what happened, the loan had burst because my client didn't pay etc. I figured out that something is wrong with the payslip. You should know that in Germany, the 4-digit postal code including the sublocal code, like 1000 Berlin 44, was changed to a 5-digit postal code, 12345 Berlin, in 1993. The payslip was from 1995, but the postal code on that thing was from 1993. He forged the payslip to get the loan to get the car because his wife told him he needed a better car to keep her. So he did all this, but two bubble burst because he couldn't afford to pay the installments. And just because he asked me to recalculate him and brought all his infos without sorting them out properly, I was able to prove that he committed some felonies, which, BTW, doesn't mean that he ends up in jail or that he gets arrested etc. He told me the story. I said what I have to do now and what might happen in the next weeks. Both have been charged and convicted of social welfare fraud, insurance fraud, falsification of documents, and sneaking bank loans using fake income information. When I was in college in the early 2000s, a sophomore drove his car into a bunch of kids out partying on a Saturday a block and a half from where I was living. He was going 60, 70 miles per hour, swiping cars parked on the side of the road, before he hit the crowd. I think 4 people died. He got out screaming nonsense before being tackled. Was on a handful of drugs. Last I heard he was in a mental facility. Was dating a girl whose little sister got knocked up when she was around 17. 6 months pregnant, drinking straight vodka at a family party. I pointed it out to them. GF. Family did nothing. Mother didn't care, didn't want to smell the bottle of water, said it was a lie. Baby mama trapped some guy with the or the father speech around month 8 of pregnancy. I, behind the scene, paid for a DNA test for him. Baby wasn't his. He mentally broke as soon as he heard it. Baby mama didn't care, laughed it off. She was just trying to nail down someone with a job. She has no clue who the father was. Baby was born with bad type of fetal alcohol syndrome. She's 10 now, severely disabled. Grandmother takes care of her. Baby mama still does hard drugs and passes out birthday blowjobs. Many lives ruined. The one that sticks out the most was the guy who was supposedly the father. Watch joy disappear from one second to the next in his eyes. The rest don't care, and it's sickening.